There are loads of defaults found inside of a Microsoft Word document. We're going to take a look at one of them right here, and a very important default that we want to make a change to. This is the Word document margins. So let's first, before we start talking about manipulating the margins and setting them to what we need for your document or what you would like, let's take a look at what the defaults are for the margins. So open in front of you, I've got the example file that was in the previous lecture. It's 08 Word Page Layout Techniques right there. So if you haven't downloaded it already, make sure you download that file, and that's the one I'm going to be using. I'm going to go over into the Page Layout tab. Earlier, we were spending quite a bit of time on the Home tab. Let's switch gears a little bit, get to the Page Layout. On Page Layout, you're going to find Margins. It's going to be the first option on there. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Margins. You're going to find that there are several preset margins, but the default margins for any brand new Word document that you open up is set right here. It's set to what's called normal. So there's a 1-inch left margin, there's a 1-inch right margin, and then there's also a 1-inch top and bottom margin. Now if you're unclear as to the margins themselves, now keep in mind, back of your head, this is 1 inches. The margins is that empty white space, right, that takes place on the sides of your page typically. That's typically where we think your margin's at. So we got 1 inch on either side. Quite a bit of white space going on in there. And then we've also got some space along the top of that document. That's your top margin. And then if I scroll down inside of my page, get to the bottom of a page, we've also got that space down below as well, that 1 inch bottom margin. Now the left and right margin, that's what we typically think of as the margins, but top and bottom, that's reserved for things like your header and footer. So you can place things like the title of your document, your page numbers, a date, whatever you want to put inside that footer or that header. We'll talk about those in a video shortly, a few videos from here. So margins, just keep in mind you got 1 inch all the way around that piece of paper, empty white space. Now I want to be able to manipulate that margin, perhaps give myself some more space on the screen, so I'm going to bring those margins out, limit from a 1 inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch or 1/2 inch, or we don't want to go too narrow. Now, a lot of your standard DeskJet printers, the ones sitting next to your computer perhaps, don't print absolutely close to the edge of the page. So you do want to be careful of that, not to make them too narrow. Okay? Or I want to bring them in. Perhaps I want to bring both sides in, or maybe I just want to bring one side in of the page, okay? and start to manipulate those margins. So let's take a look at this. We got a few ways you can do it. I can go back to Page Layout, I can go into Margins, and I can pick one of the presets in here. Here we're going from 1 inch, let's go down to 1/2 inch, so let's cut it in half. This is called narrow. So I'll give that a click, and you can see what happened to the edges of the page. I've now gone down to 1/2 inch in all of those directions that we were looking at earlier. So once again, giving myself a little bit more space on the page. Now let's also look down here, because this is very important. I can see that currently with these margins, narrow margins, 1/2 inch in each direction, that I've got 2 pages, page 1 of 2. I've got 2 pages within this document. Let's go back to margins, and I'm going to set it to the normal, back to that 1 inch margin in all directions. Again, much wider space in there, but look at that. I'm at 3 pages. So again, based on your margins, how narrow, how much you bring those out, or how much you bring them in, okay, really dictates a couple of things. One of them being, how many pages do you have within that document? Because it's either stretching the amount of content right across more pages because you've brought those margins in, or you've brought them out, and you can fit more on a single page. Okay? So all I'm doing here is going up to the Page Layout, to Margins, and I can pick one of these defaults. Now if you want to custom your margins, I know the exact margins, the inches that I need on the sides and top and bottom of my page. Okay? Well, you can do this one of a couple ways. I can go back to Margins, and down at the bottom I got Custom Margins. And in here, this opens up my Page Setup tab, where I can set up my top, left, bottom, and right margins, and I just type in a value. Let's say I want to leave top and bottom at 1 inch because I want to put things like my header at the top, logo, document name, whatever. And down at the bottom, I want things like the page number and confidential and maybe my name or whatever else I want to put on there. So I'll leave quite a bit of space on those two areas. But left and right, I want to make those 1/2 inch each. So I'll just say 0.5 for left, 0.5 for right. I'm going to hit OK. Now I've still got all that space up above, but I've got margins pushed out, giving myself a little bit more space on that page. Now I'm still at 3 pages. If I scroll down, let's look through this. There's page 2, there's page 3. So I got roughly 3 paragraphs on that last page. Now if I've been asked, hey, you know what, you got to get all this to fit on a single page, I could try messing around with the margins a little bit more. There might be other techniques that I could use as well, but margins being one of them. Now one last method here to be able to manipulate your margins. Again, page layout, margins, you got the presets. They just come with Word. You've got the ability to customize your margins, type in the values you need. You've also got this third option where you can come up to your rulers. And I can start to manipulate the margin here. Now, if your ruler is not turned on, okay, for some reason it's not there, just go up to your View tab, top of your screen, View, then you'll find an option for ruler. You can activate it right there or turn it off if you really don't need it. But for now, I do want it. So on the ruler, I've got these little, what looks like kind of triangles in this little box. I got a triangle over here as well. But if I move into there, and it's kind of finicky. You may not get it your first time going in there, and I may not even get it the second time. But I'm looking for, when I hover my mouse over there, a double-headed arrow, kind of east and west arrow here, left and right. Once I find that, I can left-click and drag, and I can manipulate that margin. Maybe I just want to bring it in a couple inches here. Let's go right about there. There's 2 inches worth of margin space now on my left-hand side. Bringing that document in, still got 1/2 inch over here. I'm not going to manipulate that side, but I've got 2 inches here. And I see this quite a bit when people are creating documents that they want to take notes within. And I've left this nice thick margin over here on the left for people to leave notes and revision notes and so on right there. But a couple different ways for you to manipulate your margins and really change the structure and layout of your document by doing so. Remember, it's page layout, margins. You got the presets, you got the customized option, and you got the ruler that you can activate and start to manipulate the margins from there. So try this out. Get that document and just mess around with the margins. Think about how many pages you need on there, how much content you want to fit on a single page, and go from there.